Welcome to the 5th episode of the Skills Factory, talks and ideas about skills from Europe and beyond. This is the podcast series prepared by the European Training Foundation, a European Union agency working on human capital development in the EU neighbouring countries. In our previous episodes, we've discussed very interesting topics like inclusive learning, skills for the future, and the new normal for education in post-COVID world. This time, we will discuss the topic of the future of education and how we see education in 2030 or 2050 and what we expect from it. In the past decade, there has been an increasing awareness that education systems are changing. On the one hand, the internet and access to unlimited sources of information has given rise to several questions about the modalities of the learning process. The role of the teachers has changed enormously, from being a unique source of reliable information and knowledge towards the role of a guide and a mentor that adapts learning to the interests and needs of each individual pupil. On the other hand, we're increasingly asking ourselves about the relevance of the skills that we learn in education and how they match with what is needed from us when we look for a job. Today, we will speak with two different perspectives. We will have representatives of the younger generation, students and graduates, European youth ambassadors from Eastern European countries to talk about their experience in education. And answering their questions, we will have a senior policymaker from the European Commission. So let's start. I'm Marie-Lo, and today we're speaking to young European ambassadors Nency Mkrtchyan from Armenia, Elene Kobaidze from Georgia, and Vikrot-Volodymyr Demko from Ukraine. And a senior policymaker from European Commission, Meredith, Director for Neighbourhood East in the European Commission's Director General for Neighbourhood and Enlargement Negotiations. Welcome, Lawrence.
Hi.
So to start our conversation, Nency, Elena, and Victor, could you please briefly introduce yourselves? Nency.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Nency. I'm a recent graduate from French University in Armenia. My major is marketing, and I'm really excited about that. I'm yet 23, but I've organized many local trainings and activities in my country, and also participated in many high-level conferences, seminars, and forums due to my network. So I'm feeling very grateful for that. So happy to be here.
Thanks a lot, Nency. Elena.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you very much. I'm very, very happy to be here. So I'm Elene Kobaidze. I'm 23 years old. I'm from Georgia, and I'm doing my master's in EU studies and hold BA in social and political science, specialized in journalism and mass communications in TSEU, Tbilisi. I have first had benefits from the EU, like Erasmus Plus programs, GCN provided by College of Europe in Natolin, and many YEA activities, and thus I consider myself as a strong EU enthusiast, and currently I'm working in Philip Morris International in customer care department. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Elena. Victor.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I'm from Ukraine. I'm 19 years old and I study international relations in Lviv in Ukraine. I have visited more than 11 Erasmus Plus projects and I work with people with disabilities mostly. And thanks to the opportunity of being Young European Ambassador, I have a lot of opportunities to set up new local projects in Ukraine, and I have done more than 30 of them. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, Victor. Lawrence, could you please describe what a director for the Eastern Neighbourhood in the European Commission does?
Sure, thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you all this morning. As director, I'm responsible for the European Union's support to 6 countries. So to Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And what we're really focused on this year is we're hoping to have a big summit bringing together the leaders of the Eastern Partnership and the leaders of the European Union. And personally, a couple of comments. I think that this whole approach to making a difference to people's lives is best embodied by working with young people and getting out of the capitals and working in the regions. So I'm really excited by what Elena, Victor, and Nancy have been saying about their personal engagement and their vision for how we can make the Eastern Partnership stronger together.
And moving on from here, how important is education and training in overall EU assistance in the region?
I think education and training is fundamental for the vision of the future. You know, the world's been through a traumatic pandemic. The European Union has been very, very quick to show its solidarity and stand by the people of the Eastern Partnership, our closest friends. And I think that the world will not go back to how it was before. So I think the role of education and training will itself change, but above all, they will be fundamental to help young people cope with the society of the future.
And what role does the ETF play in it?
The ETF has a crucial role. The ETF for a quarter of a century now has been a pool of experts who bring together the best experiences of the world of education and training to share. And I really think they are a great example of how we can strengthen our knowledge by sharing our experiences, not just from the European Union with the Eastern Partnership, but we on the side of the European Union learn a lot from our friends in the Eastern Partnership, but also from other parts of the world, the Western Balkans, the Southern Neighbourhood. So I think it's a great example of the strength of experience sharing.
Thanks a lot, Lawrence. Now, young European ambassadors have some specific questions about the future of education, and let's listen to them. Nency, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and I'm appreciating the whole solidarity and support that that you're giving to especially Eastern Partnership, and that's why I have the specific question, which is the following. How deeply and how far we can go to digital education and training. For example, will the new normal be online and digital?
Thank you. Lawrence.
Sure. Excellent question, Nancy. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, of course, we wouldn't even be able to have this podcast bringing together all of us from 5 different locations. I think that's amazing in itself. I'm certainly not a world expert on digital skills, but in all modesty, I think I've improved substantially, even at my vintage age, over the last 18 months. And I think it's a change that's coming the world over. What I find most fascinating, I'm going to tell a story, not from the Eastern Partnership. We come together once a year with all our delegations, all European Union delegations from across the world, Commissioner Varhey, Commissioner Opelainen, and we were sharing experiences. And one guy works with Syria, and he said, listen, at the start of the pandemic, we were really worried because we had 50 treasured interlocutors from civil society, and we thought we were going to lose contact with them. It had taken us years in the very difficult crisis of Syria to build up these contacts. But actually, the complete opposite happened. Because of the power of digital technologies, within 12 months, we'd increased from 50 treasured interlocutors to 650. Because with digital, although these people can't move across war-torn Syria, although we didn't know how to reach out to them physically, when we opened up digitally, we suddenly found a whole bunch of people who wanted to connect with us. And I mean, that's from one of the most stricken countries in the globe. And I think that shows the power of digital technology. And I really believe, I'm a frequent public speaker, and I honestly observe that we have the capacity to reach much wider audiences in often a much more engaging way. You know, I'm not a big fan of the old-fashioned conferences where everybody talks off the top. It's much cooler to be with you and do a podcast. So, but it means we need new skills. So that means we really need to help our friends in the Eastern Partnership equip the young people for the future. A last comment, if I may, on this one. I come from a small village with more cows than people. And I've traveled a lot across the Caucasus where I feel very much at home. It's a very rural environment, quite challenging physical landscape. I think digital technologies, and I've discussed this with the ministers of education of the region, are already transforming the educational experience of young people, where maybe communities simply don't have enough people anymore to have physical schools, or they have to bring people from far apart. The digital experience means that we can all be closer and really enhance and enrich our learning experience. So I think digital education is the future.
Thanks a lot, Lawrence. And the next question comes from Elena from Georgia. Elena.
Thank you. So Finland and Denmark are known to have one of the most successful education systems in the world. How justified do you think it would be to copy Finnish and Danish education systems to the Eastern Partnership countries?
Thanks, Elena. Great to be online with you. As I say, when I listen to Nancy and you, I have such a strong desire to travel to the Caucasus. I really miss it. But in terms of educational models, that's really interesting. Of course, we see that for a number of years, I think the PISA process has been fascinating in benchmarking across a whole range of different issues, the quality of education. I believe it's a really important peer process with this rotation over the years. And also the whole Bologna process that looks at education quality. It's not a one-size-fits-all. One of the things I've loved about my quarter of a century working in the European Union is that there's every challenge has lots of different possible solutions. And the most important issue is to have a solution adapted to the local realities, which may change even within a country. I mean, you know better than me that the differences between, for example, the educational experience in Tbilisi and the educational experiences in some of the other regions is quite strong. And that's true not only in Georgia, but in many countries. So I think what's important is that we look at what's working well in what environment do we have, and therefore what can we most usefully copy. So I'm the director for institution building, and I think the ETF is a great example of institution building, by the way. And I think what you need is a menu of opportunities. Sure, Finland and Denmark have some really interesting cutting edge approaches to education, and the whole world looks to them. But that's not the only solution to the issues. And I mean, I will give you another example. One of the world leaders in digital education is Estonia. And I know that Estonia has very close links with Georgia, for example. So I think it's important to look at different examples.
So it's not about copying and pasting. It's more about learning from each other and taking some elements that could work in one country or another, right?
Absolutely. It's sharing experiences and seeing what can work in your own realities.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Next question comes from Victor from Ukraine. Victor.
Yay, thank you. So my question would be also about people with disabilities. So what is the future of education for people with disabilities? And will they have a chance of studying in an inclusive environment as well as having all the facilities for their needs?
Victor, I have the greatest respect for what you're doing and I admire your passion and engagement. In my own life, I faced a number of health challenges. I grew up as a child tackling epilepsy. I've had 2 heart operations, but I want to be in the mainstream, you know? I don't want to be marginalized just because I have health difficulties. And I'm really proud that I made my own career through hard work, but also the inclusiveness of the people around me. And I really think that's so important because we're all people and nobody should be left behind. And I think, you know, there's the debate has moved on from when I was a child growing up, and, you know, the first debates were very basic about access to buildings and issues like this, which unfortunately is still a challenge, unbelievably 30 to 40 years later, by the way. But okay, I think public administrations are much more aware of that, but there are so many more challenges about how people interact with people with disabilities. And, you know, a disability may limit you to do certain things, but you may be exceptional at doing other things. So I think it's creating an environment where people of all talents and abilities can bring to the table what they do best. And I think it's absolutely fundamental that we have an inclusive society.
Now we go for the question from Nency from Armenia. Nency, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I'm very excited to hear about the essence of online education. As you already shared your experience with working with youth with disabilities, I will share my own. Currently, I'm working with the youth from rural areas in Armenia as an EU for Youth alumni. And I would like to know, if you were an 18-year-old from Armenia, from a community of vulnerable group, what would you do to overcome the challenges of this online education? Because there are many, I think, and I would like to hear your opinion on this.
An excellent question. And I'm sure that you have many good ideas. So in fact, what I would enjoy most is an exchange. But what I can say is what we've just been touching on. The online capacity can really facilitate access of people in rural communities in particular, and especially vulnerable groups, to high quality education. And I think there are a number of important factors. Going online isn't a solution in itself. It's really important that there is a proper quality control at a national level and drawing on international experience, so that and that needs to be adapted to the learning group. We just discussed people with disabilities. Well, if somebody has particular disabilities, you may need to tailor make the content of the course and the way in which it's delivered. I would start from the community that you're working with and really start with a thorough needs assessment before you embark on how to solve the issue. You need to be really clear what the issues are. One of the strengths of the European Union, and maybe we can help you, Nency, is to bring together communities who are tackling similar issues. And I'm really like to stress again this importance of finding a peer group that is as similar as possible to your own. And then I'm sure that with the help of the European Training Foundation and other actors that I work with through my contacts in the European Union, we can put you in touch with people who are struggling and finding solutions to exactly the same sorts of issues. Thanks, Nency. Keep the good work up.
Sounds really great, Nency. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your work as well. Next question will come from Elena, Georgia.
One of the biggest issues in the education system is that academics does a terrible job of framing its role and the mission. In Georgia, we have a practice of annual testing of high school teachers. In public schools, for example, only a very small number of teachers can pass 50, 60 points out of 100, and no one is taking any measures to retrain them or, if necessary, change the academic staff. So how does the EU see the reform of the education system, and are there any strategies you can suggest? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Elena. You know, education is crucial for the future of young people, and investing in quality is a constant process. So, but it also has, you have to start from where you are today. And I think, once again, it's about taking stock of what the issues are in the system and seeing what it is that you most want to reinforce. And we've had very good events together with the European Training Foundation, both in Tbilisi and in Yerevan. I've had the opportunity to participate, where we've discussed with the ministers and a broader community. And I think, you know, the outreach to the broader community is really important. What is it that students and parents want? Who are the stakeholders in the education system? And I think a particular challenge is the skills. You know, I've been discussing, for example, with the European Business Association, an important actor in Georgia, as in other countries. And I mean, they are desperately keen that the education system helps deliver young people with better digital skills, but also the whole STEM issue is very important. Science, technology, and engineering and mathematics. fundamental that the education system can generate more young people better skilled in these areas that the employment market of the future will need. I would add to that, we haven't yet talked about it this morning, the green revolution. I mean, clearly society is becoming more green. I've just come out of a climate leadership training myself, and we're looking at what more we can do inside the European Commission to make our own actions more green. And I think that, you know, whenever I engage with young people, I was talking to a young group from the College of Europe in Natalin only a week ago about how that is changing the way the whole economy works. This is not just a compartmentalized, oh, we've got green and then we've got the economy. No, the whole way that we source energy, that we work together. I mean, you know, one of the major assets of the digital revolution is that it's much greener, and that's better for the environment. So I think that in terms of a national strategy to strengthen the quality of education, you need to look at the future direction of the economy and the society. You need to outreach to business, but on the other hand, also to young people and parents to really get that dynamic going. And then you need to have, you know, demanding quality standards for teachers, and make sure that there is constant upskilling of teachers, because, you know, it's not the question of training, becoming a teacher, and then you teach for the next 30, 40 years. You've got to make sure that the teaching curriculum is not only updated for children, but updated for teachers. And I think that's an important part of the quality standards. A last remark, as you know, the European Union has set up the first ever European school outside the territory of the European Union in Tbilisi for the benefit of all Eastern Partnership young people. And I think that's really an interesting example, because it brings to Tbilisi a new style of teaching and a new approach. And I think that is injecting some energy also into the Georgian public teaching system. So I think, but having a clear vision and a strategy for how you're going to implement that is fundamental. And that strategy needs to be inclusive of all the key actors in society.
Thanks a lot, Lawrence. Now the question comes from Victor from Ukraine. Victor.
Yeah, thank you. So we have this, I would say, terrible problem that I think is not only the problem of Ukraine, but mostly of countries that are represented here. So it's a corruption. So how do we fight corruption, especially when it comes to higher educational institutions, especially in countries where corruption is very common? And the other part of the question would be, how has the EU managed to fight corruption so far?
Well, thank you very much. It is unfortunately a real challenge, both inside the European Union and in the Eastern Partnership countries. And I mean, we will shortly be putting forward a vision of the future of the Eastern Partnership. I'm quite sure that tackling corruption will be high on the agenda. I think transparency is fundamental. I once been involved in a major survey. I think on that occasion it was in the Western Balkans by UNODC on all actors, you know, and that gave us I think they interviewed about 10,000 different people, and it gave us a real insight into where corruption was the biggest problem in society. You know, it's unacceptable that for the future of young people, anybody would have to pay bribes to get access to basic educational services. That's, for me, completely unacceptable. And I think it's really, really important that there's a proper ethics and integrity approach in each of the 6 Eastern Partnership countries. And that also means, and here's something I'm passionate about, strengthening the justice system, because what happens when people are found to have been guilty of corruption, it's very important that there's proper follow-up by the justice system. And to be honest, across the region, that's not yet sufficiently robust. I'm really clear in my public speaking that I think that the justice reform is the #1 priority for the Eastern Partnership countries. And the peer pressure and young people and parents coming together and saying it's not acceptable.
I'm loving this conversation a lot, because from the future of education, we went through justice system, then we went to the inclusion, because basically education includes it all, right?
Absolutely. Education is the foundation of the future.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Lawrence. So, and now the question from Nency again. Nency.
Thank you for a very nice discussion. Maybe last but not least question from my side, which is very close to my heart, because as a career coordinator and a facilitator in an accelerator program in one of the leading universities in Armenia right now, where I'm working right now, I genuinely believe that students should be provided with entrepreneurial and work-based learning education and the opportunities that can be provided. So I would like to know, are there any specific needs to be explored in our region, in the Eastern Partnership region, in this field?
Thank you very much, Nancy. And it's very important what you're saying. And I think as we look to the education of the future, we need to be much clearer about the employment opportunities of the future. And that means innovative ways of bringing the key businesses together with the key schools. And I think that this is starting to happen a lot more. It needs to be developed stronger and further. I would argue that, if I may put it this way, that for certain elite opportunities, that's perhaps strongest. And I'm thinking really of a fabulous innovative project in Armenia that not only I have visited, but more than one commissioner, the TUMO project, which brings together and encourages young people to get hands-on learning. It's a possibility to combine with your other schooling and later opportunities. But I've also seen, for example, innovation labs in different parts of the Eastern Partnership. I'm thinking of one that I visited in rural Moldova. And I think that, you know, it's really important that this coming together of employers with young people, but also with those who organize the education system. So I think at the level of government, local authorities, strengthening the links between the employment and business side with the provision of education services is the future. And to give, because schooling is a long-term project. You know, you get people young, it's a 10-year or 12-year process. And so you need to be sure that the education system stays ahead of the game. And that's a challenge, because the employment market's evolving very fast. And the education, once you're launched upon it, it's quite hard to adjust the curriculum. But quite clearly, we need to do much more to prepare for a greener economy and to prepare for a more digitalized economy. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lawrence. Well, anyway, we know that we are in the middle of economic crisis, not only European Union, but also EU neighboring countries. And we definitely need to find solutions to tackle the unemployment issue. So that's what you've said, no? That, and Nancy's question is, I think it's about that entrepreneurial mindset and the possibility to have practical knowledge is important for people to get the job after they have finished the education. Now I think it's the turn for Elena from Georgia. Elena.
Thank you, Maria. Will there be more Erasmus exchange projects in the medical and technological fields? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. Well, you know, I think what we have definitely seen in the last 18 months is that all of us missed a trick as regards investment in health and health resilience. I think if there's one lesson coming really strongly out of this global pandemic, is that the world over, governments need to invest much more in the resilience of health systems and anticipate future problems in a way that makes sure that the whole system, and then we see, for example, a terrible crisis in one of the most populated countries of the world now, in India. And I think it shows that we really need to anticipate the future and invest in health. And I think, unfortunately, the health sector has suffered in many countries from underinvestment and under preparation, because this crisis resilience, a lot of it, I mean, the amount of time it took to get personal protective equipment and basic masks on a global scale, nobody had imagined it would be like that. Technological, as you say, is an important part of that, because the solutions to many of these potential pandemics is in high technology equipment. Some of it's in basic equipment, but you need both. I mean, you need the masks and the gloves, but you also need the ventilators, unfortunately. So I think it's, and ultimately the vaccines. And I think, you know, we've never seen a vaccine developed as fast as this. And I think that shows that the global determination to beat this COVID-19 pandemic. And I hope that we are now well on the way towards a lasting solution. But unfortunately, there's been a heavy loss of life and a devastating impact on our economies. So I think it's a very wise question, Elena, and I do hope that all public policymakers, we will take notice and ensure that the education systems of the future bring also crisis administrators. That's what we're talking about. And it's actually something that we're doing a lot in terms of our work with the Eastern partners is global disaster risk reduction programs to anticipate, because we're talking here about a pandemic, but we've also seen, I keep coming back to this existential issue of climate change. And I do believe that we need to be ready, not just for pandemics, but potentially for droughts and floods. And we've seen even in the region, the devastating impact that these can have on local communities and on societies as a whole. So I think I would also argue that adapting, let's say, helping young people prepare for an uncertain world, and you know, that you can't just teach knowledge as perhaps we might have done in the 19th or even early 20th century. You have to teach skills and adaptability, because we don't know what the world's going to look like. I do believe in the fundamental motto of the Eastern Partnership that by sharing experiences, by showing compassion and solidarity, that we can indeed be stronger together. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you, Elena, Nancy, and Victor, because I think as young European ambassadors, you're really stepping up to the plate and leading by example. And I really admire your courage and commitment to bring this as you embark on ambitious young careers, also to build in this stepping up and speaking out for European values. So thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot, Lawrence. If I would like to ask you to identify 1, 2, 3 keywords. So how the future of education should be. What would be those keywords? Nency.
To be short, I've been thinking about this for a long time. And I think that non-formal education first as a hashtag. And then I have work-based learning, which is mostly about, again, connected to unemployment.
Thanks a lot. Elene, your 2 keywords for the future of education.
First one would be student-centric learning. Second one would be career readiness. And I have a third one as well. More flexibility in education. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Elena. Victor.
Yeah, so mine come in pairs. The first one is equality and equity. And the second one, justice.
Excellent, thank you. Lawrence.
Well, thank you. First, I would say it's important to invest in quality of education. Secondly, as we've discussed at length, it's essential to ensure inclusiveness of education. And thirdly, again, we've discussed this a lot. I think education needs to be adapted to the society of the future. So adaptability and visionary. So it needs to have a vision of the future, which needs to be more green and more digital. A little bit more than 3 words, but there you go.
But you just took my word, because for me, it's green and resilient. Thanks a lot to all of you for this conversation. And yeah, follow our podcast, like it on all the platforms, and there's much more to come. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Nency Mkrtchyan from Armenia. Thank you, Nency.
Thank you too.
Thank you to Elene Kobaidze from Georgia. Elena, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
And thanks to Vikrot Demko from Ukraine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor, for being here. And massive thanks to Lawrence Meredith from the European Commission, Director for Neighbourhood ACE. Thanks a lot, Lawrence.
Thanks very much to you, Maria, and a big thanks also from me to Nancy, Elena, and Victor.